JEDI's May 2021 virtual plenary, Building Better Together 2. This is, like I said, this is day 2 of our 3-day session. Our first session was last week, and we heard from some guest speakers, Chief Patricia Bernard from Madawaska Maliseet Nation, who shared with us some information about treaties and land claims and the differences between those, and some activity that's been going on in her community. And we also heard from some of our wonderful partners who shared what they were doing in respect to Indigenous inclusion and reconciliation and bringing that into their workplaces. Just for your information, we have recorded those sessions, and we will be recording this session and the next session as well. So those that have missed it, we will be sharing via social media, and you can catch up on those sessions as well. So with that, all due respect, I would like to introduce Elder Donna Augustine from Elsie Booktuck First Nation. She's going to open up our session today with an opening prayer. Elder Donna, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Well, Alan, Val, it's a good day. And again, I'd like to introduce myself in my language. And I don't know if you heard some of the conversation that Alex and I just had, but it is so good to be able to speak your language. You know, it's a good feeling. We have a sister that's married in North Dakota, and she'll call home simply because she misses the language. So sure, of course, she misses us. You know, she's really our cousin. But we brought her up when her mom died, and that's just our way. We always take people in, and so she'll call home because she misses speaking the language. And it's really good to, and I tell people, at least try to speak a little bit. Like over here, the gas station attendants over here must think, oh, gee, this elder woman doesn't understand English, because I'm always talking to the Mi'kmaq, but I know they understand me. They always respond to me. So, you know, we have to keep our language going, our languages. So I'm going to light a little bit of smudge. And this smudge represents that it purifies our spirit and prepares us for something. Something that we're about to do. So this is a very heavy smudge bowl. This is a giant one that was given to me in Northern California when I went and did a ceremony there for the Maidu people, Maidu tribe. So I'm going to offer some smudge to the Creator, Gisok, the spirits of the 4 directions, Auchibanuk, Apkadesnuk, Etkasnuk, O Adnuk, and Mother Earth, Gishnamamigo. I'm going to then I'm going to symbolically offer some of this medicine to you. I didn't light a big smudge because my son, who has cystic fibrosis, is in the other room. And I'm going to offer some of that smudge to you symbolically. And I'm going to take that tobacco, and I'm going to say a prayer on behalf of all of us, and ask that we be guided today. And first, to give thanks for this day. You know, sometimes people think that historically thought that the Native people worship the sun. We don't worship the sun. We just give thanks. Every morning when that sun comes up, we give thanks for another day. And especially here in the East, where the people of the dawn, the people of the East direction, we're the ones that see that first sun coming up in the morning before it goes out west. So it's very important to always give thanks for a new day. There's many things that will happen throughout the day. We never know what's going to happen. But at least every day, if we start off by giving thanks, you know, giving thanks for a new day, giving thanks for our families and for our health. And, you know, there's so many things we could be thankful for. So I'm going to offer that prayer on behalf of all of us. Hagisok, Nigatgo Sisi Mikjebit. Yimula Giskuk, Edward Magiskuk Depi Item Sutkoe. Mulali Chutagnago. Mulali Nego Dandarianko, Walali Uchin Janna, at Nujina, Walali Uchimijuadi, Stamen Nasit Amuti, Westpidajig me. Walali Uchim Sogan Mir, Chimimaju and Gisuk, Niwadamek, oh. How Chibanuk, Jamishan Leok to Nadil. Nagusit Nanadal, Hidden Yasad, Rascala Demawi. Achicha Amishkip would not lay in Nadil. Walali Uchit Nago. Walali Uchin Janna, Nujina, Amichuaj Westpidaji. Wala edwacht me gis ko tepti ait na sukoi kilo klanki da so an akulo so an jugadi na nanu do diego chini ke mawi daya oh ha kedesnuk chami shadle ok na dia a chi chami shebi tan le na dia askala de mawi edwacht me gis ko chi chami shadle ok na dia chpidano kilo klanki da so an akulo so an jugadi na nanu do diego mawi daya wala le knego tan de bo omega tan de ko li oh Hartges nog sa we kemiskis na ik dacht mo sit am. Da wada beksultier. Walali kuchikisko. Walali nego dan del na mi das ma na. Walali dan de ya kwe wi nego le am ne mo no. Mi wada me. Walali. Ha o ad nog chami sha leok to na del. Ach ti chami sha beg mo na lewi na del. Askala de ma we. Walali nego pisun dan del jugadi dan shin do de del na kamlo mi na. Dan je gid me diek. Walali pisun ki bemadu. Edward Magisko, Keloko Gulso an, Akidaso an Jugadi, Danado Diego, Walali. Hagish Namamico, Walali Kishni Mamico, what you know Sukoi, Mi Magic, Walali, which is Sangwan, Gundal, Minishko, Weesisk, Nimeshk, Sukoi Danado Diego, what you mean one. Walali, Tandel Gungobiadi, Pola and a kill, attended Gamotiek, Walali Nego, Dandelia Quaviak. Oh, Walali, Nogama. All my relations, for we are all related. Oh, thank you. So back to you, Val.
Wonderful. Ulam, Elder Donna, thank you so much for your opening prayer. So before we go any further, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional land, traditional unceded territory of the Wolastoqey peoples. I'd also like to mention the Mi'kmaq territories as well, as some of us are situated in those territories. So these territories are covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which the Wolastoqey and Mi'kmaq peoples signed with the British Crown in 1725. The treaties did not deal with the surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Wolastoqey Mi'kmaq title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. So I'd like to take this time now to introduce our president, Alex Dedham. Alex is joining us from Escanobidich today, and he's going to have some opening remarks. So over to you, Alex. Alex, you're on mute, dear.
Somebody should unmute me because I never know when I should be muted or unmuted. I thought Brian is it Brian that the Duncan, I guess, is the host, co-host. Thank you, Val. Merci. Well, Donna, Dan, Delia, also the name of Ice, much good one. Where you can well, Ali, Clamanigea, Yesi, Desnin, Kisi, Gina Masu, Desnin. On behalf of the Joint Economic Development Initiative, I'd like to welcome all of you to JEDI's virtual plenary. The title of our plenary, today and part 3, Thursday, is Building Better Together, part 2. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Alex Dedham, and I'm the president of the Joint Economic Development Initiative, or JEDI for short. Before I go any further, I'd like to thank our elder Donna Augustine again for joining us during these 3 online events. She's always an inspiration and a wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate her wisdom. Thank you again, Donna. This is the second of 3 online events for JEDI. We hope that you are able to join us. I hope you were able to join us last week, where we invited speakers, Madawaska Chief Patricia Bernard, Keith McIntosh, Edie Keeley, Peter Seymour and Kelsey Bernard to join us. Chief Patricia provided an abundance of information about the peace and friendship treaties, land claims, and title claims. Her wealth of knowledge on the topic and her interest in answering questions provided us with a really engaging session. Our second session with our 4 partners from PQA, Plato, Testing, Hayes Farm, Working in New Brunswick, and NB Power was about reconciliation and inclusion in the workplace. They shared their unique perspectives on promoting reconciliation and engaging Indigenous peoples. One simple idea that was recommended was to create a welcoming environment, and another strategy that was employed was creating ways to help Indigenous people take advantage of opportunities. If you missed last Wednesday's session, I encourage you to watch the recording of that session. We will include a link in the chat, and the blog post summary will be out on the JEDI blog in the next couple of weeks. Today, we'll focus on our Building Better Tomorrow plenary report and discussions. Duncan Guérin, JEDI's Research and Evaluation Specialist, will provide us with some of that report highlights, which provide the foundation of our 5 breakout sessions today. We will host 3 concurrently at approximately 1:50 p.m. and the final 2 concurrently at approximately 2:50 p.m. The 5 discussion points today are: first, understanding the impacts of COVID-19. COVID-19 has drastically changed the way we live and do business. So it's important to remember that we as we make plans for the future. Second, building relationships. Third, overcoming obstacles. 4, key opportunities. 5, recommendations to stakeholders. On Thursday, May 27th, our focus will be on creating action plans based on our discussions today. We hope to have some concrete steps that we can take as a whole to help move our outcomes forward. It's important to note that in order to have real reconciliation, we need champions of the cause, and that's where you come in. If you have not had a chance to sign up for May 27th, I encourage you to do so now. We will share the link in the chat. We need everyone's input and participation to continue to build better tomorrow. On behalf of the Board of Directors and staff of JEDI, I would like to thank our funders, the Government of Canada, the Government of the Province of New Brunswick. I also like to thank all of the chiefs and their councils in the Wolastoqey, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy territory who support JEDI and our initiatives. We all work together for the benefit of Indigenous peoples in New Brunswick. Finally, JEDI would like to thank all of you for joining us here today, and I hope that you have a good session. Merci, and thank you. Back to you now.
Thank you so much, Alex. So before we go any further, I just want to cover a little bit of housekeeping. We do ask that participants, if possible, to share your video with us. It's out of respect for everyone. We also ask that you keep your mics on mute. And I would like to point out some functions that are available through Zoom here. If you have any questions, we do have, if you go to the bottom of your screen and scroll over the menu, there is a reactions button. If you click on that, there's a raise hand feature. Just demonstrate there. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand via the reactions option. Or there's also a chat box in that same menu at the bottom. There you can see the box chat. Just click on that and it will open your chat box. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask the group, or you can click on the little blue drop-down menu and ask somebody specific questions. So if you want to ask myself a question, just look for me in the list, or if you wanted to just address everybody in the group, feel free to do so as well. Also, we have Kayla Johnson here with us today. She's been our partner in executing this event, and we thank Kayla for being here. She's also here to provide us any tech support or any any issues that we may have. Please feel free to reach out to Kayla. Also, just wanted to let you know that we are recording this session. It will be available at a later date if you so choose want to share or review the information that was delivered today. We will have a short break at 2:45, I believe, and just a short 5-minute break before we enter the second discussion session. And with that being said, I think that I'll just introduce Kayla. I know Kayla had a few things she wanted to discuss with us before we go any further.
Thank you, Val. So for today, we are going to be participating in a few breakout sessions. So as we join different sessions, you'll be able to see what they are before going into them. But what I will be doing is I'll open up 3 different rooms. And when I do, on the bottom of your panel where you see your reaction button, where you see your chat box, you'll see a button that says Breakout Rooms when I initiate this activity. And when that happens, you'll see 3 different options, 3 different rooms you can attend, and we'll dive a little bit more into that. I'll let Val dive into that, what your options are, but those are the rooms that you'll be joining, and you can choose where you'd like to go for the duration of the session. If you are having problems and you cannot find the breakout option on your screen, please say in the text in the chat box, when you open the chat box, where you'd like to attend, and I will automatically send you to that room. And just remember which room you were in, because on Thursday we'll be re-entering those same rooms. And the second session in the afternoon, after our break, we'll be doing a brand new set of rooms. So if you have any questions at all, if you're not familiar with breakout rooms, or if you can't see the breakout room options when I execute that, and I'll show you what I mean when we press that button when we get to that point, please let me know in the chat box which room you'd like to go in, and I will execute that for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. And if you notice as well, we have several team members that are keeping us up to date on this event. I see Kayla and Gwen both shared registration for the 3rd day. If you have not yet had a chance to register, please do so prior to Thursday. Also, we'll be doing some random prize draws today. So with your participation today, your name will be entered into the draw for some prizes. We have some great JEDI swag. And also we have some grand prizes for the 3 days of attendance. Your name has been registered, your name will be registered, and for some grand prizes. We'll draw those on the 3rd day, but we will be drawing today as well, just for some, not just for some, but for some JEDI swag. So that being said, I think we'll move on to our next session of the day, and that is the Social Science and Human Resource Council's report and highlights. And I have my colleague Duncan Gallant. Welcome, Duncan.
Great, thanks, Val. Thank you, Alex. Thank you all, Donna. And so it's going to be a bit of a longer session today. So I think I'm allowed an icebreaker. My icebreaker to start is I had to apologize to Val that I couldn't put the fancy JEDI logo in the background because my body would disappear. So I figured that would be more disconcerting for people if they just, the floating head was talking to them. But then it brought me to the bookcase behind me. And so you're looking at the bookcase, you're like, man, this guy is really, organized, and he's got an eye for style. And so it's my wife's bookcase. My bookcase is in the basement in an old, dark brown IKEA shelf. So my wife's big into like the home edit shows and whatever. So it's actually organized by color. And so that's not how my brain works. So my brain hurts every time I look at the bookcase behind me because all the books are organized by color of cover. And that's painful for me to think about. So yeah, my books are in the basement, and as in marriage, as you guys know, it's give and take and compromise. So I lost the battle about whose bookcase got to be in the office. So that's my icebreaker this morning. But I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go through just highlights of the SHRC report, and I'll make this full screen. So you guys should be seeing that, and I should be in the corner. So I'd like to thank you all for your time. And the report was called Building Together, which was on purpose. The idea is there's a lot of stakeholders, a lot of community organizations, government departments, and industry that have a vested interest in full participation of Indigenous communities in economic development. And so this report tries to bring people together just like that. And so I'll go through the background a little bit. We'll review the process of how the report and the findings kind of came together. I'll give an overview of findings, but we do have breakout sessions later today where we'll go in detail. I don't want to shorten anything that too much, but we will give you some highlights about how the sessions were shaped. and some next steps after this report. So the background in 2019, a Maui was held, which is a gathering in Mi'kmaq, and that was in 2019. So this was funded by the Indigenous Research Capacity and Reconciliation Grant from the Social Science and Humanities Research Council. And so that's essentially why it's called the SHRC report, is they were a major funding partner for this initiative. And it brought 130 frontline representatives from across the province from multiple sectors. And so really was a fantastic gathering of stakeholders, of communities and leaders getting together to talk about enhancing economic development for Indigenous communities. So the two real objectives of this 1.5-day event, this big initiative, was one was it was going to ask the question what Indigenous economic development means to Indigenous peoples living in New Brunswick. So it wanted to kind of define that from the people living in communities and what it means to them. But while doing that, it hoped to identify obstacles, opportunities, and priorities of economic development for the Indigenous peoples of New Brunswick. So there's actually, that's quite a bit of major objectives for that event. And so I guess the event would happen over 1.5 days. And there was community and expert presentations on a variety of topics. We'll cover a couple of themes that were touched during those sessions. There was some very significant group discussions. There's also a survey from participants of those days where they were asked specific questions on how to improve economic development and other related items. And so that's where we got a lot of the good responses. As well, so as part of the breakout sessions, there was a SWOT analysis. So it's an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and it's an exercise talking about internal and external opportunities and threats. Some people call it a SWOC now, which is a fun term. So with changing the T to a C, so challenges into threats. But that was one of the exercises that went through. And I'll actually just talk about the report. So the report itself is the first 20 pages. I think Tyler Foley, the previous research officer, did a fantastic job of summarizing the history of the Indigenous peoples in New Brunswick, but also the legal developments that occurred regarding land right and appropriation. And also I gave a New Brunswick context of the development of economic development with Indigenous communities in the province. So if you haven't read the report yet, the first 20 pages or so, Tyler Foley, the previous research officer, did an excellent job of giving a nice broad summary that kind of gives you good introduction to economic development initiatives and policy in New Brunswick. So it's a great read. What we're going to focus on for today and the next day for plenary is the consultations and the gathering that occurred with the input from the Indigenous communities and stakeholders at this event. And so that's kind of the focus of it. So those findings and the breakdown of that and how it occurred, that's I think starts on page 21 of the report. But it really is a good read. And so if you want a good background leading into economic development for Indigenous communities, I strongly recommend you have a look. Like I said, the sessions that we're going to be focusing on are page 21 on or so. And it's focusing on the gathering, focusing on the questions that were asked of the participants and the answers we got from it. So some of the themes that came out of the small group discussions and the surveys, relationship building was obviously very important for participants. And I think that goes to the title of this whole report and whole initiative of working better together. What is Indigenous economic development? And actually we came up with a rather complex definition of that. Best practices in community development, the landscape for economic development in the Maritimes, the role of economic development officers, economic development corporations, and business services officers. So this was a big opportunity to talk about where we can work better together and where we can help each other. Indigenous entrepreneurship in New Brunswick was a key theme. And then there was a presentation from Chief Clarice Louis and on his community success in economic development. So if we actually might, I think some people on the call today might have attended. And please feel free to share your experiences either with the group or in the breakout sessions. But I think JEDI felt it was a really good opportunity to get these 130 participants in the same room to talk about these important issues. So the first question about what Indigenous economic development means to Indigenous peoples living in New Brunswick it was definitely noted that economic development is seen by some Indigenous peoples and communities as both a legacy of colonialism and a continuing risk to the way of Indigenous ways of being. So it's just by participating in the economy and monetizing some aspects, there's certainly a risk there that that puts stress and may conflict with some of the cultural of beliefs and ways of operating for these communities. So that was certainly noted, that it's with a grain of salt that economic development is looked at from an Indigenous perspective, but it's also a potential opportunity for to build autonomy and self-determination for these communities, to create jobs and to help these communities be self-sustainable, but the individuals living within those communities to be self-sustainable. So we think it's a very important and broad way of looking at economic development in terms of Indigenous peoples in New Brunswick. Some of the overview. So this one slide has a lot, and so this actually breaks down a lot of the breakout sessions that we'll be going through today. And so it looked at what are the most important factors for successful community development. And it's not to linger too much, but some of the key ones that came out of that were self-sufficiency and self-sustainability for communities, long-term stability and community health and wellness, as well as profitability and growth. Those were some of the key factors that were kind of identified. What we'll do with the breakout sessions is we'll go through and figure out how those answers kind of arose from the others. And we'll do check-in to see if there's anything we're missing or if there's any new factors. So the report obviously was done in 2019, so a lot's happened since then. So we'll just want to make sure that the 2021 context is applied and that we're still looking at it from updated information. Next was key priorities for Indigenous economic development. So some of the key priorities were creation of employment opportunities, development of workforce skills, and the development of land and infrastructure for economic development. So those were kind of consistent with past research initiatives on the topic. But like I said, the breakout sessions that we'll go through today will really dive in about how those answers came about and what questions were asked to get there. And are those still the same priorities? And so we will be doing report back sessions after we have those kind of deeper breakout sessions. So if you can't attend one of these topics, the report back sessions will be important, so you kind of get a sense of how those sessions evolved and what the discussions came out. But it's also over the 2 days, today and Thursday. Hopefully you have a chance to add your point of view and your sense to those questions. Some of the key opportunities that were identified in this report back in 2019: cannabis, tourism, natural resources, and renewable resources were some of the main themes that came out about potential opportunities for communities to enhance economic development. And some of the challenges that came from here were financing. So this had an entrepreneurship level about financing, but also capacity funding for communities. So we're going to talk about what that means exactly and what it means to different stakeholders in the breakout session. But financing as a broad term was identified as a major challenge, as well as social issues and human resources. And so we did note that in some cases, governance and leadership were identified as a potential problem area for some participants, but for others it was a benefit. It was an opportunity for them as a strength. So we got a broad range of answers to those questions too, but some really great responses. And so, like I said, if you haven't read the report fully, our breakout sessions today, we'll try to go through, and this is our opportunity to report back to you guys to show where these answers came from and make sure they're correct. But the report itself is a good read. And then there's a number of recommendations. So we have a specific breakout session on this, and really it's recommendations for whom and what that means and what the next steps are. So those are all very important questions. So I won't specifically go into them right now, but for an example, for the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, one of the recommendations was to encourage them to fund opportunities like the gathering to make sure that we can still ask these questions and get the answers, as well as we've asked them to support a platform to share information and resources relating to Indigenous economic development. So there's some very interesting practical things there that I tied to different levels of stakeholders. But what we'll try to do through today and Thursday is we'll look at those deeply and see if there's other recommendations that can come about it and what the next actions are. So the next steps, the idea was we had a really great discussion and event in 2019, where we had a lot of participation from communities and some really great discussion. And JEDI is trying to make sure that this is not a report that just goes on the shelf. I think everybody on this call could probably think of an action plan that's in a binder or on a shelf and was very well written, but stayed on the shelf. And so we're going to try to do our best to make sure that the discussion continues, and we really look at the results that came from this report, and also that we try to define to some degree where we go from here. So as Val was and Alex were saying, so day one, we got to talk about a lot of certain issues around treaty education, land claims, and calls to action. So today and Thursday, today really is, the report was published and it was given to Shirk, and I think was also published in the Can Do research publication, but we didn't get a chance yet to talk to stakeholders about the results of the report. And so that's what we're going to try to do today, is we're reaching back, giving stakeholders an opportunity to do a deep dive about where the recommendations and the answers came from. And we're also going to try to update them and make sure the list is complete, and if there's anything that's changed since 2019. So that's basically what today is all about. And then day 3, Thursday, next action. So given the context and the lists and the discussion we've had, where do we go from here, and what does that mean for each stakeholder, and hopefully we can keep the conversation going, and like I said, not put a well-written report on the shelf. That's the goal of this these 2 days. So how we broke down the breakout sessions, and Val can probably add to this after as well, is basically COVID-19 is one of those things that was not part of the 2019 discussion, but definitely relevant to communities right now and definitely part of the conversation. So we wanted to make sure that was a topic that was added. So that's an example of a very current item that needed to be discussed, but wasn't part of the report. And so the other sessions, so building relationships, overcoming obstacles, those are actually sections of the report. And those breakout sessions will go into a deeper dive of understanding what was in the report relating to that topic, but also enhancing it and adding more to it if it's not a complete list, but getting basically a full understanding of what came out of that really great event regarding building relationships and overcoming obstacles. The second breakout session, similar. So key opportunities, again, is a section of the report. We're going to do a deep dive into that, as well as recommendations to stakeholders is the other breakout session. And so what we can see is we're trying to break down a lot of content and a lot of great discussion, and we're trying to give stakeholders and others a good opportunity to understand what's in it and add to it. And then day 3 is talking about where do we go from here. And so you can see that those sessions are actually mirrored from today on Thursday, but it's instead of discussion and understanding, it's an action plan. So now that we've developed that list and we understand the report, and we've had a chance to add to those topics, where do we go from here? And that should be a great discussion and a reason to register for day 3 if you haven't done so already. And so that's an overview of the report. So it's lengthy, and the breakout sessions will go into the details, but there's a lot in it. We have a lot of great engagement leading up to the development of this report, and hopefully we can continue the discussions with today's sessions and Thursday sessions. And I'd open up to any other JEDI staff or participants that might want to add to my summary. That's all for today. So I guess over to you, Val.
Thank you, Duncan. Just give me one quick second. Just got a quick message to reply here. So yes, thank you, Duncan, for the great summary of the Shirk report. If anyone needs a copy of that, Gwen did share it in the chat box. It is a pretty good read. I suggest that everyone, if they have not had the chance to read it, to take that opportunity. So just to let you know, as Duncan discussed, we are now going to break out into breakout sessions. Room A, as Duncan previously mentioned, is understanding the impacts of COVID. And, we feel that it is, very important topic as we all, entered this pandemic, the crazy, it's been a quite the roller coaster ride for many. So great information session there. Room B is understanding the relationship, building relationships. And that is relationships between Indigenous communities and stakeholders, partners, private sector, and how we can better assist our Indigenous communities to become more self-sustaining and self-sustaining, sorry. And our third breakout session is overcoming obstacles. And with that session is breaking down obstacles that Indigenous communities are facing when it comes to economic development and workforce development. So what we can do to assist communities and organizations to, first identify the obstacles and then determine ways that we can break those obstacles and barriers down. So as Kayla mentioned, at the bottom of your screen in your menu bar, there is a breakout room button. Welcome back, everyone. I'm sorry if you got cut off there at the last few seconds. I didn't get the 10-minute warning, but I know Sam was in the process of sharing a comment and she got cut off. We apologize for that, Sam. But I guess we are going to do a recap here of everybody's session. And did you have anything to share with us, Kayla? Are we good to go with the recaps?
We're good to go. I'm sorry you didn't get the 10-minute warning. I sent a 10-minute, 5-minute, and there was a 30-second.
We didn't get those, and it could have just be me because I'm running a Mac, but I'm not sure. But anyways.
We did get them in our session.
I did get the last one. It was 118 seconds or something like that. So I was like, oh, shoot. But thank you. Anyways, thank you for everyone in my group, and I'm sure everyone's group had lots to share. So I will begin the recap with group 1, which is the understanding COVID-19. So I will ask Janice and Lori to do a quick recap of your session.
So yeah, we did the understanding COVID-19. So we talked about a lot of the challenges that different businesses faced. Alex mentioned they had to make sure they had access to the emergency services and like making sure protocols were followed. So having security to kind of check and make sure people were maintaining 6 feet and masks and things like that. And then also making sure that kind of people were paid a little bit more to do these jobs, put themselves at risk. And obviously most offices kind of went to reduced hours, or the ones that could anyway. And then an issue that seemed to be a common problem was poor Wi-Fi connection for some people. So switching remote, if you didn't live near good Wi-Fi, then that limited your ability to go to classes or like go to work. So that was also a hard one. Like internet, yeah. And then for people who had children and the daycare was closed, being kind of having to take care of your children or homeschool your children instead of sending them. So that was another issue too, of like trying to balance work, school, and teaching your children too. Also, there was sometimes unclarity with the standards, or like getting things that didn't meet Canada standards, so you'd have to buy new ones, like just making sure that they were up to protocol. Donna brought up that family-oriented communities. So there was a number of people passing away in communities. So with the restrictions, there are only 5 people allowed to attend funerals. So there was the issue of you couldn't pay your respects, you couldn't have your traditions, and you just couldn't be there to support your family or your loved ones. So that was really hard as well. Donna also mentioned that she started doing talking circles online because some people were starting to feel lonely. So the talking circles helped to rebuild that connection and feel connected once more, because that is a big issue with COVID, is feeling that disconnect. So that was a strategy to help feel connected again. And also making sure to keep the balance of seriousness of COVID, but also lighthearted, so you don't stay too heavy, you're able to have that balance. Diane also mentioned the same kind of similar issue with the Wi-Fi, but they didn't have the total lack of Wi-Fi, so there was just some bad, but not too bad. The changes that we're doing remote, so she runs the incubator and accelerator program for JEDI. So normally we'd have the students come to Fredericton in order to take that class and be away from their family. But since COVID, they couldn't come here. So the upside to that was that they were able to stay home and do it virtually rather than come here. So it was both good and bad because you couldn't just sit down and hard focus, but also it's your home, so that's nice. With that, we were able to provide technology for the students. So they made sure that they had good computers and stuff so they could participate. They also did the talking circle with their group to make sure that people still felt connected, because that was obviously one of the hard challenges, is you're coming into a new group of things, and so you want to feel connected and learn. So that's something they did. She also mentioned that some businesses had to delay their openings or be on hold or find creative ways to open their business instead, because the program is to help new businesses start to launch. So that was a lot of challenges that the new businesses face that they couldn't. She mentioned that a food business switched to catering instead of opening a restaurant, because that way it's a little bit easier. You just deliver the food and stuff like that rather than having set up establishment, because the building prices are so high right now. And putting more focus on online businesses stores. As if you can't shop in person, then it's good to have your e-commerce set up so you can shop online instead. And yeah. And then, yeah, someone mentioned that the frontline workers were nervous about working, which is understandable because you can't control other people, but you can't control your own safety. So there is that worry of, like, you know, you're being safe, but you can't guarantee everyone you meet is also being safe. So that was another issue that we discussed as well. And that was the highlights from our breakout session.
Great. It sounds like you guys had a great session and some, you know, great points being brought up. You know, it's definitely been a year of roller coaster trials and tribulations, definitely this year, and a lot of adjustments. So thank you for sharing that, Lori, and great work. So next group is understanding building relationships. That was my group. So I'm going to get Sam to do the recap for us if she does not mind.
Thanks, Val. So we discussed building better relationships, and some of the main points that came from that were the first steps would be to get more people involved and the importance and understanding of Indigenous culture, make it welcoming for partners to be able to engage and understand culture. Wade had mentioned that he doubled the number of apprentices in communities over the last few years, and one of the things he said was once you establish those partnerships, it's a lot easier to continue them and understand the community needs. One of the main themes that kind of popped up more than once was it's important to do what we say and say what we mean when we're establishing partnerships with communities. Also be flexible and reliable and lead with your heart. Being open to learning in education was also another main theme that seemed to come up more than once. And IRAM was mentioned. That's training Indigenous reconciliation awareness module that JEDI delivers to help understand Indigenous history and reconciliation. We discussed some of the barriers that people have experienced when engaging with First Nation communities, and it was important to note that it takes time and to be patient and to spend time getting to know the people and to communicate when and visit the communities when you're invited, and showing up and again doing exactly what you say and say what you mean. Two main things were brought up to build partnerships, engage with partners, is educate yourself and show up were two important things. There's a lot of back and forth with relationship building, and often barriers can present. So it's important to continue to show up and maintain rather than letting the partnership fade. And it's important to go into communities with a very open mindset and understand the needs of the communities and listen. Listening was another main theme that came up. Recommendations with building relationships or making them more meaningful is understand the community, utilize IRAM, informal approach when engaging with community, and the importance of understanding the history of Indigenous people. One important question that came up was how to overcome hesitancy in the approach to conversations with communities. And the answer to that was really to utilize tribal councils or Indigenous organizations like JEDI to help facilitate that initial engagement with the communities. And it's important to understand your audience and know them. And how can private sector support economic development was another discussion that we kind of branched off into, and the importance of forming joint ventures, understanding ISAP programs and capacity development. And job postings, we had a little discussion around job postings and the importance of language in those job postings, and how experiential knowledge is becoming just as important sometimes in certain positions, and not just to look for university degrees when looking for potential Indigenous candidates. Funding, and we also discussed too, a lot of the difficulties with funding, and provincial funding and federal funding. And when writing a proposal, all the hoops you got to jump through and the difficulties it can be to meeting all the needs of the proposal. And opportunity and community often are viewed as two separate things, and people feel like they have to leave their communities to have opportunity for growth in their career. And this was kind of the part that I got cut off with. I made the comment how COVID has, you know, there's a lot of downfalls with it, but it's also made it so there's work from home opportunities, and how that is creating opportunity in communities for people. And that was all we had for our update.
Awesome, great.
Something quick, Val?
Yes, absolutely.
So I just want to, so Sam is our Provincial Indigenous Employment Coordinator, and she's also working on some things to help with relationship building. Like, I mean, we do have an employer toolkit that's coming out. We've been working on it for a long time, and it's going out within the next couple of weeks. And I probably said this before, but it's definitely going out within the next couple of weeks because it just needs to go up on the website now. So there's an employer toolkit that's coming out, and Sam is that direct contact that we put in there. She's also working on partnership packages or partnership plans, so that, you know, if you're a partner and want to work with us or other communities, and you want to reach out to Sam, she's always looking for more partners to work with. And then something else that we're working on is, and I wrote it down right here because I didn't want to forget it. What was the third thing, Sam? Partnership plan.
Onboarding plan. Understand, like onboarding and orientation.
Best practices, but also onboarding plan. Okay. Sam's also working on a best practices piece. So we've been taking, we've been meeting with a lot of people recently and talking to a lot of people and talking about best practices in regards to working with Indigenous peoples and communities and hiring and retention and all that. And I know that Sam's been starting to gather some of that information. So keep your eye out. We're working on some things to help facilitate relationship building too. And if you want to, talk to us about anything and you haven't got anyone to connect with yet at JEDI, Sam's your girl.
And also we get a nice little social media following. We do have a Facebook page where we post a lot of our information, opportunities, stuff like our employer toolkit, our IRAM programs. So please feel free to follow us. So last but not least is our understanding overcoming obstacles, and that was with Duncan and Connor. So I will hand it over to you for your recap.
Sure. So, Connor, you got this?
Yep, sure. You can go into the discussion, but I'll basically just talk about what we talked about. So we talked about the key challenges from the SSHRC report, and Duncan defined and clarified what that was. And basically we tried to find modifications or anything that needed to be added to the list so that we could update it. and it was developed by JEDI through multiple choice and long answer surveys, group analysis, and discussions. And then from that, we found from the surveys that what are the top 3 challenges your community faces in terms of economic development. And the first one was financing, and that was an occurring issue in the surveys. And then the other 2 were social issues and human resources, which social issues was also a reoccurring issue. So we talked about that. And then we talked about the 3 top challenges that entrepreneurs in your community face, which was financing again, business plan and or entrepreneurship training, and social issues. And then there was more that we talked about. And then we went into the SWOT analysis, and then more key challenges and obstacles for the pursuit of Indigenous economic development. And yeah, basically just tried to refine and understand the obstacles that were faced. And then we went into a discussion. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah, no problem. So we had extensive discussion on why financing was the number 1 obstacle that came out of the plenary. And one point was in some cases, because governance and leadership in some cases was also an obstacle, but lower down the list. And it was noted that in some cases, governance might be the obstacle to more financing. And so there was a discussion around organizational assessments and whether, what can be improved in some cases so that financing is not a barrier, or private institutions might be more likely to give funding. We had extensive discussions on what a Banyan Council resolution maybe when it's required, and what that might enable some projects to do. But there's also challenges of on reserve and off reserve businesses. And there does seem to be, we'll say, a lack of appreciation of a business case made for a number of projects. So whether it's if the business case was not strong enough, in some cases, if it was initial no, it was organizations that provide financing, even though it's a no up front, it might be there might be a work plan that was attached to it with some suggestions about, well, if you strengthen this part of your proposal or develop this skill set, then please reapply. That initial no might be pretty forceful for a number of applicants. And so that was discussed of, well, maybe there's educating people on credit scores, and that or more we'll say connected consulting of helping people through the process, that even though the first decision might be no, it's not a no forever, and there might be a way to work through the proposal to develop the business case to enhance that skill, or make them more eligible to receive funding available from public sources or other programs. So we had a good discussion on that. Yeah, so I think that's for us is trying to appreciate why financing what was the number 1 issue, and how can we kind of improve access to that. And I look forward to our action plan discussion on the next session.
Awesome. Thank you for that recap, Connor and Duncan. And with that being said, we are running 5 minutes behind, so I am going to stop right now and allow everyone to take a 5-minute break. I have 2:50 now, so if everyone could return at 2:55, that would be great. Welcome back, everyone. And at this moment, we'd like to open up our second breakout sessions. And room A, we have understanding key opportunities, and room B is understanding recommendations to stakeholders. So we have 2 rooms open, so please feel free to choose one of your liking. So welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone had a great session. I know we had a great little conversation in our session. So right now we're gonna do a quick little recap of your session. So I will ask Duncan and Lori to give us a little recap of your session.
Do you want me to recap the discussion? You do your presentation, or
Sure, yeah, you do your thing, and I'll throw in a couple chip shots at the end.
Okay. So we talked, Deborah brought up the surprise of the lack of construction kind of being at the top of the list of the survey. But we also talked about how there was 130 people, so they not be in that industry. But yeah, this is how sometimes people leave New Brunswick to out west, or how sometimes trades are overlooked. And opportunities in New Brunswick, Alex brought up that when they do projects in this community, that they try to look for Indigenous laborers and like workers, but they're struggling to find some workers. So that's an issue, and funding has also gone down to kind of support these. So that's an issue there. And then obviously not wanting to leave your home to go get certified. So that can be a deterrent to get this training and to grow that workforce. There's also some talk about project management. Deborah had the suggestion to maybe put project management in high school to kind of teach that as a skill, because it is a thing to learn just in general. Talked about how politics can get in the way with some planning, that plans can be improved, but then there's issues following through with certain plans, just maybe because some politics come into place there. So it's good to educate leaders in order to help the community better. Then we also talked about agricultural, like growing that more, and alongside kind of cannabis as like agriculture, and then tourism as well. Deborah mentioned that some Indigenous communities that do farming, and they like partner up to do little farmer market style things. So that's a good thing there. And then there was conversations about food security and how those are growing in New Brunswick. So that's something else to bring up. And then Andrew brought up tech agriculture. I'm not entirely sure what that is still, but apparently it's a big opportunity as well. And obviously regenerative farming. And then potentially looking at hemp too, inside of cannabis, but using hemp the thing too.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. Go ahead, Duncan.
No, I think she hit all the nails. So just I guess to reinforce what were the top 4 things out of the report. That was cannabis, tourism, natural resources, and renewable resources. And we did actually, it sounds like we'll be adding a couple based on the discussion. So that's great.
Awesome. Thank you, Duncan. So the next group was understanding the recommendations to stakeholders. And we had a note taker, but she's doing double duty today. So I guess I will take over for her. So what we talked about is some of the recommendations that were made to our stakeholders. So some of the things that we talked about was consultation, meaningful consultation, not just being a text box. Lessening the criteria for funding dollars. There's lots of proposals that we all need to apply to, to create our programs. And sometimes, there's many loopholes that we have to go through to be able to meet the criteria of some of these proposals. Also, the need for multi-year funding instead of having to apply year after year for, dollars for programming, make them multi-year agreements. Also, we talked about understanding how First Nation communities use their tax dollars and their own source revenue, and that most of those dollars are reinvested back into the communities, into existing underfunded programs. So a lot of that money will come back into the community, to fund other program, with its other education, health, or ECDEV. Also, we talked about hiring Indigenous businesses in break community projects, and to help those communities build capacity. So, you come to the table and you write your bid for a job. If we have to employ outside businesses, non-Indigenous, to have criteria in your contracts. The first year I'm going to employ 5% Indigenous. The next year I'm going to employ 10% Indigenous businesses. Until you can help build the capacity within the communities, and then they can start hiring their own Indigenous businesses. Also, communities want to encourage them to start supporting individual entrepreneurs and not just band-based businesses. We also talked about the STEP I program, MAP strategic planning, or match strategic services, has a STEP I program, which will help build capacity in communities in different fields, trades, carpentry, machining, mechanics, what have you. So start to, utilize those projects. And Stan, feel free to jump in case I missed anything.
Sorry, Val, I'm just going to jump in. I actually was, Diane made a very good point during our conversation about the funding based on it being annually. So she made a good point how every year, what's going to happen if we don't get the funding. So she made a good point about how maybe we could get a way of prolonging that. So annually, we don't need to reapply for funding. It's just there for us to have.
Thank you, Taylor. Stan, did you have anything else to add?
I think you got everything, Val.
Yeah, very good. Well, wonderful. Thank you everyone for being here today. Some great conversation was generated today, and I hope that gets your thinking cap generated some ideas. Thursday, we'll be discussing some action plans and, putting our thoughts into, so we can, build from those and create some great projects and what have you. So with that being said, is Alex still with us? Alex is still with us. Do you have any closing words for us today, Alex? You're on mute, hon.
I had problem unmuting. I don't know if somebody was holding down the button or something, but I definitely do want to make comments. First of all, I'd like to thank all of the participants. I think that this is an extremely informative and interesting session. There was a lot of interaction in the breakout rooms, and I think that the certainly reviewing the CERC's recommendations and the report was it's a great idea, and I think that we openly shared. I don't know if we're just getting used to doing this by Zoom these days, and we're not constrained in any fashion. And I'd like to as well thank all of the staff for doing a fabulous job. I'm having difficulty sometimes with your backgrounds because right now I can't see Stanley very well because everything on one side is all black, and I think that you must have a tan or something. It just blends in. But anyway, and I think that Duncan's library that looks smooth and informative and
Colorful.
Yeah, and Diane, you're always sailing someplace, but I don't know if that's a sail or in a harbor but anyway, the interesting filters that we have. So I think it's an excellent session that we had today, and certainly we're looking forward to the Thursday one. And Donna, as usual, you're just a very wise woman full of knowledge, and I'm glad that you're sharing it with us. Panamega de Welani, Nigeria. Edu nestag na Gina, middle of Nagajika Wele, Delaware, Gedu Ginamasito. That was Andrew, wasn't it? Is Andrew still here?
Yeah,
Are you the one that's trying to learn the Mi'kmaq language?
Hello, I am, yes.
Megatali aski kisko.
Not that well yet.
Okay.
You want a book?
Just in case it came up. It's one of the
Fell
things
back to you.
difficult with COVID is language is such a communal activity, and
Yes.
I can't go visit the communities.
That's right.
You can visit by Zoom.
Love it.
Modern smoke signals.
Eh,
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex. And I'm going to pass it over to Stan real quick. I think he has a little announcement for us for our daily winners.
Can I just,
I'm sorry, we can't hear you, Donna.
oh,
There you go. Yep, we're good
Okay.
now. We're
I
good.
just want to
hear
say
you now.
something to Alex. I was thinking, you know, the mute button. Remember, we were talking about being very adaptable. We're going to have to find a Mi'kmaq word for unmute, because I'm told that a lot too.
No, for some reason I was pushing the button and it wasn't responding, and I don't know what it was. I pushed it, nothing happened, and finally a little block came up on the screen itself, and it says unmute. So I pushed that. So I wasn't gone. I wasn't asleep. I couldn't sleep today for some reason. Too interesting.
Thank you. Thank you. So over to Stan.
Yeah, so we do have two winners for some Jedi swag, and our winners for today are Peter Nelson and Wade Wheaton.
Wonderful. So we will be in touch with you both to make arrangements to get those great gifts to you. And that being said, thank you everyone again for joining us today. And our next session is scheduled for Thursday at 1 p.m., 1 to 4 p.m. And that will be a follow-up to today's session. And we will be creating some action plans around our discussions today in our individual groups. So that being said, if nobody else has any comments or questions, I'm going to hand it over to Elder Donna to close our session for today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Val, and thank you, everyone. I find it was a really good meeting, and the discussion, like Alex said, is really good. You know, we need more of those discussions. So I'd like to offer that, I don't think, just hold on, I'm going to close this door. I'm going to close this door, guys. That's one thing about doing everything virtual from home. There's always noise. Yeah, and Val, I just want to tell you, your little ones are amazing. So if you ever interrupt, that's fine too. They're so sweet. So I'd like to give thanks in our way. It's important to give thanks when we request something, and we never take that guidance for granted. And I know we are being guided, and the more we work together collectively, I feel that it's so much better. There's so much where everybody feels valued. You know, everybody has that chance to participate. I think that's really, really good. It's all inclusive, just like the circle, you know, in our talking circle. So I'm going to hold this eagle feather up, and I'm going to say that prayer on behalf of all of us. Giso kolali kisku tandel mawaliek. Ni wada mek tandeli kweliek. Walali ko chitangelo kugo soan. Akida soan begis duyego. Walali kiso tanego tandeli kweliek. Akliado shi pugota delaigal. Which sinugo analai. Walali kiso tandeli kweliek. Ho. How chibunuk chamishan leo to nadel. Nadel danago sidlni asad. Walali kisku. Tandel pedayo. Achija mishkipu. Walali. Tandeli kweliek. Tandeli bono muyek nego. Ho. Hap kades no chamishan leo to nadel. Tale terrible bedega chicha bitan leo nadel. Walali kisku tandel mawali. Walali tangelo ko akidas wa nakos wa ambegis duego. Mi watamek. Ho. Hat kas nuk sa wek kamiskis na I nak sit am. Tawada bek sotiek. Walali kisku tandel mawali. Walali tandeli kweliek. Walali ek nego. Ho. Ha, o ad nuk chamishan leo to nadel. Chicha mishwabek muy nadle nadel. Walali kan pisun tandel chugade tashin do de tiomina kamlomina. Walali kisku tandel mawali. Walali tangelo ko so ambegis duego. Dagelo ko so anna. Na wichi ni pisun. Walali ho. Hagish na mamigo, wala the kitchen mamigo. There you go, down there. You go, so I can know Jimmy Majuan. Ni what I make. Wala the kiss go tandil mawalia. Walalia. Ha, said Nogama. All my relations. Aho.
Wonderful. Well, and Elder Donna. And again, thank you everyone for participating, and I hope to see you all here on Thursday.
Okay. See you all soon.
Alvin, Elder Don.
Okay, okay. Here comes Dan.